Guys, time to record.
Okay.
What are you guys?
It's time for speed.
Yeah, it is.
I don't understand what you
So let's
guys
get down
are-
to.
Dude, people are not gonna listen to this episode of all things at half speed.
Okay, fine. Yeah, all right. Well, we're still getting fast paced, but just with the songs instead. Welcome to the Music Arcade.
What about listening at 2 time?
No. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Music Arcade. I'm Caleb the Sound Guy Firestone.
And I am...
Get back to normal speed, please.
Kel. I'm Ranakel, fine.
And I'm Eddie, and I'm still wondering why we're talking about my workout playlist.
Well, your workout playlist is kind of notoriously fast, and you guys, all three of us, actually been playing a fair bit of Roboquest lately. You guys more than me. And it just sort of like, let's do fast music.
Yeah. Fast music's pretty good, and I just felt like getting in the mood for that. And perhaps the fact that by comparing playstyles in multiplayer a little, I realized that I have a bit of a fast playstyle combined with my general preference for the more noticeable and heavy themes in video game as opposed to the more discreet and ambient ones, means that I felt like this was an appropriate request for a theme. So let's do it, and let's do it fast.
I love
Your
it.
comment about having a fast play style makes me chuckle, because I have a fast play style as well. The difference is I suck at it.
Yeah, and then here I am kind of turtling in the corner and playing all extra careful, which makes me a bad fit for this game, let me tell you.
Yeah, turns out the very time-limited hidden items are pretty important.
Yup, I just have a real, like, doors and corners. Let's not talk about the video game, let's talk about the music and speed things up a bit.
Just one last mention before we start, which is that mostly we won't be talking a lot about racing games, because we had an episode already about that, I believe.
We did, and then also during, I think it was one of our Halloween episodes, I did, like, the racing guy as my, like, gimmick.
Yeah, correct. We will have one racing track later, but other than that, it's going to be mainly more action or RPG games and the likes. A diversity of genres, without any special focus on racing games, because it's a pretty natural fit, and when it comes to discussion, it's like your goal is to go fast, so music pushes you to go fast. Great. Anyway, let us start with the impetus for this episode, some Roboquest soundtrack, starting with DDoS.
I was about to say that this game is a perfect example of how you don't need to be racing to go fast.
Yeah, it has a deceptively low beat per minute. Like, it's only about 75, which, 60 is heartbeat rate, so...
And yet it feels so much faster.
It does. I mean, there's a lot of syncopation, a lot of layers. It kind of tricks you.
And as a heads up, syncopation is going to be a recurring theme in this episode, I feel
Unsurprisingly, it's a good way to kick up the intensity without necessarily kicking up the actual, like, difficulty of play.
Yeah, it's like, I have one note, but what if instead I had 4 notes?
I mean, to reference back to a comment that I make a lot on this podcast, that's kind of why Latin rhythms have so much syncopation. It makes the dance go by faster.
That's a very good point.
But here we aren't dancing, we are shooting with insanely big guns, because it's Roboquest. DDoS is one hell of a flow state for me, I'm gonna be honest.
That's been a pretty recurring theme throughout the YouTube comments on this one.
Yeah, and the flow state is pretty important, because it's the kind of game where you really need to not just have reaction time, but also habits when it comes to anticipating the enemy patterns. And so you kind of need to get to the flow state, and the music feels instrumental in getting that.
I think something that also helps with this song in particular is that this applies to every song in the game. They basically have a slower part that plays when you're in the hub, pre-entering the stage,
Yes.
and the actual fast pace plays when you're in the actual stage.
Mm-hmm.
And on most songs, there's a very noticeable difference between those two parts. DDoS is one where they actually mesh better, I'd say. So I think you are kind of already predisposed into entering that state prior to going to the action itself. At least
Yeah, exactly.
for me.
And even though it's very much the same track, I like that they have kind of this different feel by adding surprisingly little to it. Like, the intro reminded me of Extreme G soundtrack, the bike battling racing game on the N64.
I haven't thought about that one in a long time.
Yeah, but it had this very nice electronic soundtrack, which I looked back into for this episode before even hearing back DDoS, and it wasn't that fast by itself, but had those tricks that kind of pushed you forward, like the syncopation, like this overall electronic-driven atmosphere. And so this track starts like that, but then with the kind of heavier noises added to it, feels more like some of the French EDM that's happened since like Carpenter Brut and the like.
Yeah.
Which is understandable given that this is a game by a French studio.
I mean, this is very much a trance song. Like, if we're talking EDM subgenre, this is like trance trademark. So that makes sense, because that really evolved from European house, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
I think the fact that of all subgenres, let's say, it is trance, and yet it keeps a fast-paced vibe.
Yeah.
I think that is what helps a lot into building that flow state.
I blame this show entirely, by the way, for me being able to identify that.
I'm gonna be honest, you're already one step ahead of me, because I stuck with electronic music subgenres.
I found myself having to learn it, especially given that you, Mr. I Don't Like Electronic, tends to use a lot of electronic songs.
Yeah, it's like we need to learn stuff and forbidden knowledge in order to know what we're talking about.
I will say that this podcast has made me learn that I do actually overall enjoy electronic music. I just don't go after it very much.
That's a common thing, yeah.
But I really don't know where one subgenre ends and the other begins with electronic. All I know is what I like, and I like this.
Yeah, it turns out music I like and music I don't like are the two most important genres in music.
Pretty much.
Ain't that the truth?
For this one, in conclusion, I just feel like it just conveys the loop and the drive of this game, that whole move fast, shoot stuff, move on nature of it. With that mechanical kind of theme, with the more, not just the electronic noise, but also the heavier sound that I like, whirring gears and the likes, which help setting up the evil robotic threat. I feel they literally called evil bots, so yeah, this game is many things. Subtle isn't one of them.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I like it so much.
It doesn't need to be subtle. In fact, it's to its credit that it's not subtle, because, you get exactly what you're asking for.
Exactly.
And
then I added another track from this game that I wanted to pick, mainly because I don't think Eddie reached that, because it was added explicitly in the 1.0 release as one of the special stages you could unlock. And I've taken you through that stage once, Galen. Can you tell us about it?
Oh, this is the racing stage that I was so bad at. Okay, making me go fast and making me platform in 3D is a great way to fail a stage, as we discovered.
Yeah.
There's no enemies in this stage. You're just running and jumping and clicking speed boosts, and good luck.
It is called the Rift. It is essentially the Star Wars Canyon race, but you're a running robot. And also, if you're too slow, the world explodes.
I have played the Rogue Squadron games. I would have been much more comfortable in an X-Wing. Just throwing that out there, now that you make that comparison.
Fair. Fair. Rogue Squadron was a good game.
Yeah. 1 and 2 were really good. I didn't like 3 so much, but 1 and 2 were really good.
I haven't even played 3.
I have. It's got some questionable decisions. Basically, it was the Star Fox Assault of that trilogy.
Oof.
Like, it's got some...
more.
I didn't mind Assault. Hang on, I'm gonna just call this out. It had some good parts, and then it had some bad parts. The bad parts usually involved ground vehicles.
I see.
Anyway, in this case, you are the ground vehicle, so good luck.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I don't actually like this song nearly as much as I liked the prior one. It doesn't really get anywhere until about 1:30.
Agreed. And that's kind of my one issue with this track. Like, it has the right pace, it has the right tone, but given that this is a level which has a very clear time limit, I think they would have been better up instead of going through this pretty constant flow state with one high point that happens pretty late in the track, to have a build-up throughout the track that would get you in the right kind of panic mode when you're like in the last 10 seconds and suddenly it gets even faster and more frantic and you sound like you are having a panic attack.
I think that would work a lot better.
That's how I feel it should have been.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that one.
Honestly, hearing about how this stage plays makes it even weirder, because I also had that opinion and I didn't even know the context.
Right.
I mean, I guess that just kind of shows that this song is a little wonky. That maybe a bit of a misfire.
Yeah. I guess for the record, I think we haven't mentioned the song title. It's called XFlash.
Oh, correct.
And,
yes.
I guess this shows that even a great composer like Noisecream isn't free from fault on occasion.
Nobody gets it right 100% of the time. That does not exist.
Yes. And that is including the soundtrack that does a lot of things right. Like,
yeah.
Here's a bit of a spoiler. There's a track that's in the part of the OST that was added to the playlist at the 1.0 release, and one of the first comments was like, this track would be great in this and that situation. Turns out, this was exactly the situation it was used in.
There you go.
The response was, why do I have some good news for you?
I mean, we once had an episode about party music, and I brought up the loading screen theme from Roboquest. Mm-hmm. That's how good the soundtrack is. Even the loading screen makes you want to listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the loading screen does... they do things even with that track. But let's not dwell on Roboquest from the entirety of the episode, because turns out plenty of other music and other games have tracks that enjoy going fast, such as Super Street Fighter 4.
So when I checked this yesterday, I was actually kind of blown away that Street Fighter 4 is apparently 13 years old. Yeah, that's a...
I can feel the dust coming out of my lungs right now.
Right?
My back hurts so much just hearing that.
Right? So, this was actually the single first song I thought of when this topic came up. I'm like, well, I gotta talk about Crimson Viper's theme. me, the not fighting game guy, goes for a fighting game song right out of the gate because this one hits all the buttons. It goes fast. It's got like a 90 or so BPM. But it's also got a lot of high energy. It does slow down a little bit towards the bridge, but then kicks back up into high gear. I think that's there specifically, like the guitar, like the acoustic guitar intro to Battery from Metallica. It makes the rest of the song sound that much more intense by having that contrast there, and I think that really kind of helps sell what it's going for here.
That I absolutely respect.
I wish this character came back. I like her a lot. She didn't show up in 5. I don't think she showed up in 6 yet.
Don't think so either. No.
She was in like one of the spin-offs, like one of the weirder ones, like Tatsunoko versus Capcom or something.
Yes.
But yeah, this music is honestly one of the more iconic tracks of the later generation, I think. Because it just hits you hard and just stays in your brain.
In fact, my main remark about that track is that it almost goes too hard, which is not something I say often, but like it really works in that lightning fast agent kind of theme, but it gets maybe a bit too grandiose, like this is a character, not a final boss, and this track has final boss energy at times.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of get that choir sort of sound. I don't know if it's an actual choir or a sample. That does kind of bring some sort of boss.
They are speaking lyrics, but that could be generative. I don't know, 13 years ago, probably someone sang this and they just put it through a whole bunch of processing, because there's definitely like a major vocoder on there. There's all sorts of pitching. So yeah. I think there was an original singer, but then they messed with it really hard. Which is a viable technique for a song like this. That doesn't mean complaining about it.
Absolutely. Okay. It fits the agent vibe again.
Yeah.
The whole technological gadgets theme C. Viper had. But yeah, overall, like, fighting games are a natural fit for fast songs, I feel.
I feel like you're right, but almost not, because, like, Ryu's theme is kind of like one of the more well-known ones. Guile's theme is the most well-known one, and it's fairly slow. Like, I get it. I really do. I think it depends on the franchise more than anything.
They were composed in a game that then had a turbo version of it that set up the actual pace fighting games would be played for the next years.
True.
Yeah, combos in Street Fighter 2 were originally a bug that they kept in, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
that became the foundation of the entire genre.
And in Street Fighter 2, I believe they accelerated the music. Was it at the final round or just when a character was at low health?
In the original Street Fighter 2, I think it was like low timer. Because I don't recall them.
I think low timer.
I think it was timer. I don't think it was. I don't think it was health.
Yeah, I haven't played it in ages, but I think it was low timer because a lot of fighting games did that at the time.
A lot of games, period, did that. Super Mario.
Yeah,
exactly.
I will say there's no way.
Yeah,
I would say there's no way a song like this would work on a slower paced fighting game like Virtua Fighter or like Mortal Kombat.
Agreed.
Street Fighter always like felt in my mind's eye to be on the slower end, but that's because most of my Street Fighter experience is way back in 2, which was on the slower end. So maybe that's incorrect thinking on my part.
Yeah, I think like in the modern landscape, Street Fighter is kind of in the middle. It has some very fast characters like C. Viper.
Yeah,
but it's not everything about it is as fast as what people call anime fighters.
Yeah, it's not Killer Instinct. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you don't almost play the same game pace when you play a Zangief and when you play a Kimberly, to take 6 as an example.
Right. Which I think is to Street Fighter's credit. I think they've always had a very good like arrangement of characters, if not always a good balance.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot that the vibe I get from watching gameplay from the newest Mortal Kombat seems to imply they're kind of stealing a bit that idea of varying much more the gameplay styles and the speed that you play at, because it is a very effective and efficient way of separating the characters.
I'm going to be honest
That it
and
is.
very harsh here. I don't think Mortal Kombat has had a real identity since 3. I think it's been riding trends even in the newer version, and the only thing it really has going for it that makes it unique is fatalities, which are increasingly immature.
Fatalities and the kind of guest characters they get in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the characters they get
Which
through,
used to be
Warner
Soul
money.
Calibur's gimmick.
Yeah, they stole another... There we go. They stole Soul Calibur's gimmick, so they haven't even done that right. Yeah, I remember playing Soul Calibur 2, and Link was one of my mains, because I played the
Everyone
GameCube
did.
version. Yeah.
I think the most annoying part to me is that between Justice 2 and Mortal Kombat 11, it felt like NRS was going to get their own identity as the cinematic fighting game, the cinematic 2D fighting game, but the latest MK just it doesn't remove the cinematic vibe, but it really neuters it compared
Yeah.
to the previous games. So I don't know what they're doing. But Street Fighter 4...
What they aren't doing, however, is making sick tracks like C Viper's theme from Super Street Fighter 4.
Has Mortal Kombat ever had good battle music? You know what? Let's not
No.
get into this franchise thing. Let's move on.
I mean, the answer was pretty quick for this one.
Fair
And
enough.
it was no, they haven't done that.
The answer was there's a reason we haven't brought that franchise up in our fighting games episode.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
The movie had more of a soundtrack than the games do.
Say it loud.
I will stand by that movie soundtrack. That introduced me to a lot of stuff I would find myself listening to in the future.
Preach!
Anyway, now we're off to, I would argue, the weirdest pick of today.
Guess who did that?
I'm shocked. Shocked, Rana.
think-
Tell me why you put Danganropa
Yeah,
on this list.
I was gonna try to guess. I was gonna ask if it started the person's name started with an R and ended with Anakel.
No. Good guess,
Ha.
good guess. Well, let me tell you the situation in which that track Objection Cross Sword is used.
Please.
So, you have the game that's structured around murders, investigations, and then class trials, in which you're trying to use the proofs you've gathered to suss out who is the one responsible for the crime, or else everybody dies. It's like a Phoenix Wright with cartoonishly high stakes. And they vary a lot the gameplay in it. There's the usual figure out what's the right statement. However, it's not exactly a regular court of law, and so things can get a little bit wilder. And sometimes when you're trying to argue your point in real life, in discussion, sometimes it's not exactly about finding the right argument, finding logic. Sometimes it's about a shouting match where you're trying to get a wording over everybody else. This is the theme of that situation.
So debate on the internet, you're saying?
Exactly.
Just
Except
in
it's
person,
live
and
in
starting,
person.
and starring weird anime characters.
Yes. And swords.
And
like
swords.
the crossword part is literal. Instead of picking your truth bullet, you need to select your truth blade in order to cut through the other's argument that spring up among a list of various insults and button mashing in order to get you to back down from something you just brought up.
My first thought with this song when I first heard it didn't have anything to do with what you just said. My thought was, this is a quirky mini boss from the third-person shooter spin-off, isn't it?
Actually, I considered doing that, except not with a quirky minibus, but with the super mode from one of the characters you can play.
Yeah,
which is kind of similar in tone, but with much more of an 8-bit pop aesthetic to it. I went for the more subdued of the two tracks because it emphasizes the speed better.
fair enough. There is a wild amount of percussion in this song, and it's not really that noticeable because of how much syncopation there is, but if you're actually like deeply listening to the layers, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, and the only reason it's acceptable is because in the game, like, you have to line up and cut through entire sentences by orienting your joystick and button mashing, and so you have a lot of sound effects that add to the track and make it the absolute chaos it's supposed to be. Because, like I said, it's a shouting match.
Yeah, that sounds about right for the environment this is apparently placed in. I don't really have much to add to this. Danganropa isn't a franchise I'm that familiar with. I mostly know it through osmosis.
Same.
Well, you have my sympathies. Because hearing about this game can be insufferable at times. Playing it though, it's great, especially 2. 2 is my favorite of the 3. The anime is trash, though.
Fair enough. Most of my experience with it is similarly through osmosis and fans of it, and yes, yelling at me that this is the best thing ever, which is a great way to turn me off of something. But also that its designer designed Cleopatra of all characters in Fate Grand Order and made her into a biker for some reason. Like, she's wearing race motorcycle boots. So, like, I don't understand what any of this has to do with Cleopatra, but okay. Because this character designer has a very...
That's one of those very recognizable character design styles. Kind of like how recognizable the character design style was for Castlevania Judgment. And that is not a flattering comparison, but it is one that needs to be made.
Yeah, some designers just have a just super idiosyncratic style, so whenever they do something outside of their normal wheelhouse, it stands out.
Yeah, which is good for brand recognition for that game, but then when another game comes out, you're like, oh hey, it's like that character from another game, and it needs something to distinguish itself.
I hate
doesn't
that
always
my
happen.
mind. I hate that my mind is now focused on the design for Alucard in Castlevania Judgment.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt I don't know, this song is just really it's like they took a totally normal song and they just ramped up the weird on it, which is an interesting way to go here. Normally when I hear objection themes, quote unquote, in this case a Blade Clash, you think of the Phoenix Wright version, which is a lot more on the nose, and it definitely seems like that's what they were going for with this. Like, how do we do this but make it as wacky as possible?
Yeah, wacky and like you've drank about 7 too many cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds not just like speed, this sounds like anxiety almost.
Which I think is fair for that franchise, or what I know of it at least.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you mentioned cups of coffee. I was gonna go with cans of Red Bull, which hashtag not sponsored.
But,
Caffeine is caffeine.
Or taurine in that case.
Which is caffeine.
Even worse. But yeah, this is very extra, let's say.
Yes.
Very energetic. And
yes.
I can say it's a fun song, but I can also definitely say I would not listen to this in my free time.
Fair. What I would listen to on my free time, however, is some sweet tunes from Mega Man X.
Maybe not this
you would.
particular cover for me, and I'll get into that later, but please continue.
Charmigo from Mega Man X. Honestly, it's not the first song that comes to my mind when I think Mega Man X plus fast-paced, but we already talked about the song that is, and that was Blaze 8nix from X6.
So, peek behind the curtain, one of the songs that I was planning to do was a remix from Mega Man X2, actually, that I chose not to in favor of Viper's theme. Glad I made that choice, considering your pick here.
I'm curious about that one. But yeah, this is it's actually a cover from a guy I used to follow back in the day. He used to go by LennartAlsing. You can kind of see that name at the intro of his videos. But his YouTube handle has been changed to, I think, his real name, Anton Norling. From what I understand, he's become a DJ now in his country.
Good for him.
So he hasn't done video game covers for literally a decade now. And but yeah, I really always really enjoyed his style of not simply playing the song directly, but also not going straight for that OC remix vibe of making it almost unrecognizable. He's sort of in between. It's not one to one, but it has some creativity, but doesn't go all the way out.
Yeah, it does find a nice middle ground.
I'm going to be honest with you. I had the opposite reaction. I thought that this was actually too straight of a cover. It wasn't very transformative until the bridge hits. And he adds like a solo in the middle. That's pretty cool. But then it's just an instrumental version of the SNES version of the song. Other than that,
what I wrote in my note was more straightforwardly that this is the version of the SNES theme that played in my head when I was 10.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I don't know. This one doesn't feel very transformative to me. And I think the goal of a remix is to bring something new to the table, unless it's deliberately meant to replace the original song. And even then, that's kind of questionable.
I think that's kind of a fair take. This is one of his least transformative covers, I'd say. He has some much more creative ones. There's one I can't remember for what song it was, that he starts just jamming in the middle and ends up playing the melody to My Heart Will Go On by accident.
Yeah.
So he has more creative takes. This is definitely one of the least ones.
Sometimes you get so much in the zone that you accidentally Celine Dion.
Yeah, pretty much, I guess. But I do like that the use of actual guitars and the drums do add the vibe of speed that the original song had, because the first Mega Man X game is probably the slowest of the franchise outside of X7 and X8, because the stages aren't all designed for you to have the boots upgrade.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, as someone who has tried for fun to do Chill Penguin last, and so to do the over 7 Robot Master stage, well, Maverick stages, without the boots, some of those are very tricky when you don't have a dash.
Oh god, Flame Mammoth must be a nightmare.
The octopus was the boss fight for the octopus in particular, because you can't outrun the whirlpool.
Oh no.
So this is hell.
Oh no.
I think I remember trying to outrun that before I knew about the boss order, and that does suck.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah, I would actually also try to do Launch Octopus first, just as a. We're getting off topic, but
yeah, I would say, to get back to this is what played when I was 10 years old, kind of that mood, that Storm Eagle was basically on my top early songs of that genre at the time I listened to them, along with like Ken's theme from Street Fighter 2.
Mm-hmm. The good old Capcom days.
Exactly. It's
memories.
Just a very nice, heroic robot rock track, and yeah, it works. Turns out, as demonstrated by the very first game we've mentioned, robots shooting at other robots fast never gets old.
It's pretty timeless.
It's an iconic concept in gaming. But yeah, I think what Rana said about this is how it sounded in my mind. That's very apt, because
Yeah.
this has the speed that I remember feeling like the song in the original version had, because of the guitars. Even though it's boss fights notwithstanding, relatively slow game compared to other Mega Man X titles.
Yeah,
Yes.
honestly, I even wrote in my notes, like, the player didn't mess up a truly excellent track, so it still sounds good, right? Like,
Exactly.
he's playing a classic here.
Yeah, my first note is classics will forever be classics, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it says something that his main scene is almost respecting too much the classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do kind of miss this guy's covers. He has some other cool stuff, but good on him for having an actual career in music in his country.
Absolutely.
Now then, let's move on to Little Big Planet, I guess.
Yeah, Little Big Planet
Some
2
other
specifically.
artists with a career in their country, I suppose.
And a whole bunch of other ones, because we're kind of dealing with, like, international stars here. Maybe not mega stars. Like, we're not talking Taylor Swift, but... So, I was once upon a time watching Little Big Planet 2 playthrough by the Runaway guys. Proton John, Tim, and... I forget the guy's name. Emil. These three guys, right? Runaway guys.
Yeah.
And they get to the end, and I'm seeing the credits, and I remember Tim kind of blurting out, "What's a Nightwish?" Because there was whoever brings
I'll
the
take
night.
questions you don't want to hear because it's embarrassing to explain, even though you like it for 200.
No, I will happily explain it. I would love more people to get into this band. Nightwish is actually my favorite band of all time. Like, I've been fairly open about this. I absolutely adore their music. I love seeing them live. They put on such an incredible live act.
I have played many a time their CDs on my Discman on the way to middle and high school.
Yeah, there is an old school contingent of fans. I'm a lot newer. I actually came in to the band on this album. I'm going to stop talking about the band for any significant period of time because I actually have a different story to tell real quick here. I have a pretty loud internal bias against licensed music. I've been pretty open about this, and I try very hard not to because, as I keep saying, music supervision is an important part of game design.
Absolutely.
And being good at it matters, but there's still this, like, bug in the back of my head. It's not real game music. That bug needs to shut up. I actually didn't pick this one at first, despite it being one of the earlier tracks I thought of when this topic came up, because it's like, but it's a song by my favorite band. I shouldn't be putting this on here, despite having actual things to say on it. So I put a track from Digital Devil Saga 2 on there that I regretted pretty much instantly, but I stuck to my stubborn guns. And this morning
Although I did have one interesting take on that track that I'm going to put out real quick, which is that it almost felt like a more fitting Sea Viper theme than Sea Viper's theme.
Interesting thought. Okay. But this morning I just said, no, I'm going to talk about this. They went out of their way to license this song. It does play in the game. Let's talk about this. And that is that this song, as a song there's a lot more going on under the hood than I thought. This is on the album version, this is some of Annette's, like, harshest vocals. She's at her most energetic in this song. So it's hard to hear some of the, like, background details, and there's a lot going on. Unsurprisingly, it's Tuomas Olapanen. It's what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels a lot less empty without vocals than I expected. Yeah,
like a lot of instrumental version of popular track intended with lyrics. It feels kind of empty, and this one, it's a full song still.
Yeah. This totally feels like it play in the background of a stage, which it does, as it turns out. Which actually brings me to my biggest point about this is there such a thing as too fast? Little Big Planet 2, from the playthrough I've watched and from the little I played of the first game, isn't a particularly fast-paced game. It leans more towards the puzzle end of the puzzle platformer.
Yeah, exactly.
So this song almost feels like it's overkill.
It does.
It does feel like an odd song to put in that franchise.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like one of the people on the Little Big Planet team was like, can we get them? I like them. More than, this is what I want for this game.
Yeah, like there are some licensed tracks that just sell the entire thing. I did a long spiel on All I Want from The Offspring from Crazy Taxi. Like, they're just so interconnected.
Yeah.
I would also make a serious argument for Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne for GTA Vice City for the same reason.
I was tempted to put in Superman from Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Which is tied similarly to Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, there's definitely a language of music supervision and licensed tracks that you could use in a game to really help sell the experience. And I think in this case, despite it being by my favorite band, despite it being a really good song, I think this might be a misfire.
I don't associate Nightwish and Sackboy.
Yeah.
I don't associate anything with Sackboy, of course. So that doesn't help. But especially not Nightwish.
Yeah, it's just a weird fit.
Yeah, let's just say that a symphonic power metal / potentially gothic metal band is not a sound I envision in mainly puzzle oriented games.
Yeah, it just feels like a weird pick, and I needed to call that out because, as we keep saying, music supervision is hard. And again, as much as I love this song in a vacuum, and I do, like, I listen to Nightwish a lot, favorite band and all, I kind of feel like I have to talk about this one because it is a very fast-paced song. It's one of their most fast-paced, in fact. It's one of their most unique musically, and it's put in a game where I don't really think it belongs. And I think, as you said, I think the music supervisor is just like, I'm a fan of these guys, so let's grab a song by them, as opposed to really trying to make a tapestry for their game. I dare say Stephen Fry has more to do with the soundscape of Little Big Planet than Nightwish ever will. And that's a weird thing to say about that, but I needed to bring this song up because I had something to say, and I think the Digital Devil Saga 2 track was a chicken out moment, and I need to call myself out for that one.
Honestly, I've never played Little Big Planet. I haven't even really watched full gameplays of it, but I know Stephen Fry's voice, and I can easily picture his voice like narrating that game, but I cannot picture metal in that game.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I felt like this was important to bring up, and I feel like I'm trying to convince myself more than anyone else right now. Which is again something I've got to get over. Anyway, but I think there's an argument here that this is too much and too fast for the game it was assigned to, and I think that's also important to talk about. Being fast can be a detriment, and I think this is one of those cases where that occurs.
Absolutely. It's not a simple slider where more fast equals more good.
Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't really seen actual gameplay that much, so I can't really comment on being too fast, but I can definitely comment on being too aggressive for a franchise that has very soft aesthetic, let's say. Even though Nightwish isn't really an aggressive band, it still is metal.
It still is metal, and this is one of their more aggressive songs, like, being honest about that. Dark Crash and Play was a very dark and aggressive album.
Yeah. That was also my first one for Nightwish, so I definitely agree on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does not fit the Little Big Planet aesthetic at all. I have some things to say about our next song. This is going to be interesting here. This is not the first time you brought up this game either, which is weird that it's coming back.
I like that soundtrack. Anarchy reigns, or as it's known in Japan, Max Anarchy. And in this situation, the track Fast Lane, which isn't particularly fast compared to even some of the other tracks in this game, but it has fast in the name, and that's actually relevant because it's a song with lyrics that are about going fast, and it's still relatively fast in itself, but it's a track that happens during one of the kind of minigame section, because this is a Platinum game, and they can't stop themselves from adding a weird rail shooter, or in this case, racing minigame to what is otherwise a very nice 3D brawler. And so you have this energy, and I like it because of this insufferable aura that surrounds it. This is the kind of song that makes me think of somebody with too much money and too little care for the audio volumes of innocent podcast recorder in the neighborhood, going fast where they shouldn't because they haven't learned what consequences are.
Welcome
So
to Hawaii
basically the
and
sort of-
or Brazil.
Yeah, I was gonna say basically the sort of person who owns a BMW in a third world country.
Exactly.
Or in our case,
has
a
that energy.
super Hemi raised pickup truck with no muffler.
Yes.
Oof.
Um,
I'll just say the vibe I got from this song is something that I don't think you're gonna like. But
Go ahead.
I was a teenager when Power Rangers was owned by Disney, and they had some rap song intros at that time.
oh no.
So you have this rapping, which isn't a particularly fast flow, and then you have the word "go" being repeated in the background in the second half. I could not think of those rapping Power Ranger intro songs.
Well, I have to counter what you were saying before, Eddie, because I like that comparison and I find it amazing.
That's fair. Yeah, no, this is very white people rapping energy. And I don't mean that as in like
absolutely.
actually talented white rappers like Eminem.
So we're
I
not
mean that,
talking about
like,
Macklemore. We're not talking about Macklemore or Eminem.
yeah.
Yeah, there is a difference between white people that are rappers and white people rap.
Yeah.
It's a subgenre.
It's just definitely the second one.
Despite itself.
It's like Todd in the Shadows' mention of the white guy with acoustic guitars being a genre. This works.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm
it
afraid to say
absolutely
I
has that
didn't quite
energy.
enjoy this song very much.
Oh no, that's entirely
Oh
fair.
yeah, no, I was right there on this one. My first words here are whack ass MC. This is honestly like epic rap battles of history, but without all the fun and irony to it.
I disagree on the last part. I believe there is a layer of irony on it.
Okay.
It is too extra to not
okay.
be that.
Fair enough. One thing that got me in particular that just made me grumbling. This dude name checks 808s in the lyrics. There isn't an 808 anywhere on this track.
I do not understand what this refers to. Please enlighten me.
Roland 808 is a specific drum machine, and it's a very specific sound that happens in a lot of hip-hop. Kanye West named his entire 808s and Heartbreaks album after the instrument.
I see.
This is not that.
Yes.
Not that I should ever be considered as defending an anti-Semite like Kanye, but this ain't
Of
no
course.
Kanye.
Yeah. This guy on a human level, but he did some good tracks.
Yeah. So yeah, I am definitely like not feeling this song in particular, but I get why it's here.
Yeah, and I think that what sells it to me when compared to and contrasted to the rest of the soundtrack is how much angrier most of the soundtrack for this game is, and then you have this absolute piece of smugness rolling at you, and it's like most of the tracks are angry, and this track is wanting to make you angry.
It succeeds.
Yes.
It does its job. Congratulations.
I have to wonder how this song sounds in game, because I feel like there's a version of this, like if this is playing during like a boss fight you're supposed to hate, I would probably be really okay with it in context.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't played the game since it's released in 2009, and now I'm feeling old again, so let's move on to an even older game, namely Top Gear. Take it away, Eddie.
Now it's my turn to feel old because this game was somehow huge in Brazil.
You've mentioned this before. This has come up in the past.
Yeah, I still don't understand how, because the SNES wasn't cheap in Brazil, but this song got huge among Brazilian millennials. I don't like to bring those guys up, but I need to bring Video Games Live up for this one because
Take a drink.
Our grudges against
Cheers.
Mr. Tommy T aside, the Video Games Live event, let's say, is the biggest international video game music concert tour. And according to the stories, every time they came to Brazil, people would request that they play Top Gear.
Huh.
Until eventually they did relent and made a piano rendition to play in Brazil.
This
Just
seems
because
like
that arpeggio. Go on.
It seems like a really weird song to play on piano, but that might actually be very cool.
I can barely remember their take, honestly, and I think I prefer the original. But yeah, that arpeggio, if you're a Brazilian person, millennial, and you had an SNES, you probably have that arpeggio in your mind.
I even flat out said in my notes, cool arpeggiation. Like, yeah.
You're not kidding about that. Looking at the video, most of the commentaries are in Brazilian Portuguese.
Yep. If you find any rendition of this theme on YouTube, most of the comments will be in Portuguese for a reason.
And it's interesting because in itself, it feels like this is the kind of track that more modern games that want to be retro-inspired kind of try to emulate, if that makes any sense. Like, you're going for a retro sound today, this is the kind of song you are likely going to hear, even though it's not what was most prominent at the time outside, apparently, of Brazil. But yeah, other than the strange feeling of modern retro, except it's not modern and it's definitely retro, it's a nice driving song. Not perhaps the faster kind compared to some of the other tracks we have, but for the era, it drives you forward.
I gotta ask, is this a remake of another song? Because the melody line sounds super familiar.
I'd have to double check, but I believe it's original. It might be inspired by something. Almost everything on the SNES and the NES was inspired by outside sources. So
I mean, sure,
it could be.
There's nothing new under the sun after all. It's just this melody line. It's just like in the back of my brain. It's also possible because I do have the Video Games Live albums that I've heard the piano version of this before and haven't put the two together.
Maybe I don't know if it's made into an album, but it might have.
Good question, dude. Yeah. Okay, take another drink. Tommy's not very good at labeling things. Shocker, I know, yeah. Right? So
there it is.
Who knew? But yeah, this actually comes straight from the composer's page on YouTube. Very Leitch. Okay. And he released an album titled SNES with songs he composed for the SNES. So it is a composition, at least as far as we know. But it probably has inspirations from outside sources. I wouldn't be surprised. But I just want to bring up back what Rana mentioned about this being sort of the aesthetic that retro wave goes for, because that is something that I also had in my mind. Like, the game's visuals already are part of that retro wave movement, let's say, that we have nowadays. But the way Barry Leitch used the SNES sound chip to make this sound, it really is very similar to what the retro wave artists in the 2020s are trying to emulate,
Yeah.
whether
absolutely.
consciously or not.
Probably very
That is very much
consciously.
what
We
we're-
are in the video game generation after all.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm going to just bring up a behind-the-scenes look here. You, before you selected this song, you actually had a song from one of the Control DLCs, which was some OG synthwave, and I'm like, and my note on that one was flat out, if The Weeknd sang over this wouldn't even be surprising. So
Yeah.
that just kind of goes to point that, yes, we're at this point where this music is kind of coming into the fore, and its inspirations are largely Super Nintendo and are largely people who grew up with the SNES and the PlayStation 1.
Funnily enough, the fact that it's Vegas is pretty timely because just yesterday finished the Desert Bus for Hope charity marathon, in which people play for an ungodly amount of time the purposely bad video game Desert Bus, which is an 8-hour real-time ride from Tucson to Vegas on a bus that slightly veers right, and there is absolutely no action and no entertainment value ever.
Yeah, it
Honestly,
was Penn
I
and Teller
thought you-
trolling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I thought you were going to bring up the other fairly timely event, which is that I believe either this morning or last night we had the Formula 1 Las Vegas GP.
I'm not tuned enough to Formula 1 to know about that.
I've
But-
Honestly,
heard some very strange things on Twitter that I know nothing about, so...
I mean, that's
Honestly,
Twitter for you.
The only reason I know about it is because someone shared with me a story about how they had to stop training because of manhole covers being an issue, because the race was on the streets of Las Vegas.
Oh dear. I'm sure the locals love that.
They ran the strip, which is a neat idea in theory, but in practice, eesh.
I've driven the strip on the motorcycle. That is not something I want to do on a regular basis. I've learned to take Paradise or take any other street. Closing off the strip for a race, that feels like a bad idea.
Oof.
It did lead to some funny images of the sphere with the emoji with an eyebrow raised, looking at the race. But
In
yeah,
any case, speaking of near-death experiences, let's talk about Apoplexy. The track, not the actual phenomenon.
This was another one of, like, this was one of them that came to me very quickly early on. This is from Final Fantasy Tactics, and this is a straight orchestral piece. It's just super fast and intense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's. I was about to say frantic, but that's not quite right. It does have this panicky feel to it, as this name implies, but it's very, very constructed, very clear.
honestly,
Yeah.
the vibe I get is sort of from those medieval fantasy movies where you have two armies in horses clashing against one another, and they're charging.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the vibe
it has
I
the
get.
feel of a rapidly evolving situation, and you just have to adapt and react to it.
And let me tell you, Final Fantasy Tactics soundtrack is kind of a miracle. Sakimoto did some incredible work on this, and this song always stood out to me because, like, for the most part, it's no secret he's very John Williams inspired. But this time, he
Yes.
actually doesn't have any of that. If anything, this sounds like Anton and Dvorak on a lot of cocaine.
No
worst
lies
part-
detected.
The worst part is that the Symphony from the New World by Dvorak is one of my favorite pieces, and now I'm picturing that, and you're not wrong.
Right? But no, there's a ton going on here, and this is a textbook case of very conventional instruments used in an unconventional way.
Yeah.
Which I think is important to talk about, because so far everything we've talked about other than Vegas which we just did, has been kind of off in its own little universe for the most part. And this is the one case where you could feasibly play this song in front of an audience, using a standard orchestral setup, and just have them be blown away by like, wait, what's going on here right now? This is weird.
Yes.
This would be the orchestral equivalent of the wall of sound.
Yes. Yes.
It is compositionally frantic.
Yeah. And I think there's something just kind of unique about how there's this disconnect between the composition and the instrumentation, which goes into what I was talking about last episode, how tradition has really kind of infested orchestral work in a way that I'm deeply uncomfortable with the more I think about it. Because this song is cool.
It is.
And I feel like it deserves a fair bit of respect.
Now that I think of it, most of the other tracks we've covered, and we will cover, are more about fast action or fast situation. This one feels almost more like fast thinking.
Yes, which is very on the nose for something like Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, exactly, because you're the decision maker, first and foremost.
Yeah. And it says a lot that this song was reused in Final Fantasy XIV as a traditional boss fight. Like,
yeah, and it fits.
It fits. And that also kind of speaks to the miracle of the song, because this is a 2D isometric strategy RPG that you have to be slow and think about that works for a fast-paced, real-time RPG boss fight.
This is absolute nonsense.
It is, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's like you found a jigsaw puzzle piece that fits two completely different jigsaws perfectly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it also has, like, some of the coolest use of timpani since The Dark Colossus Destroys All, which is hilarious because The Dark Colossus Destroys All was, like, 5 years later on the next generation of systems.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is just sort of a beautiful mess of a song, and I had to give it the credit here if we're talking fast music, fast-paced music, fast energy. Like, let's do it fully orchestral and see what happens. So there was kind of no way I wasn't going to select this song for this topic.
And now that you've mentioned some near tracks, I now regret not going the Drakengard 3 direction.
Yeah, there were a couple songs that my brain may have gravitated towards, but I feel like I have more interesting things to say on these other tracks, honestly.
Yeah.
And we've talked Drakengard 3 a few times on this show. I mean, we've talked Final Fantasy Tactics a few times on this show.
In the end, I don't regret my choices, but
yeah,
still bit myself a little over the fact that I didn't even go there. Then again, I had a lot of tracks selected pretty quickly, the first of one being the next one we're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's maybe early for a transition, I don't know. You still have things to say about Apoplexy?
No, I covered basically everything I wanted to.
Eddie?
I don't think I have anything else to say beyond this track. It's amazing.
Then this works. Let's talk about endless high-speed running from Valkyrie Profile 2. That's right, I'm not letting you out, Sakuraba me.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is totally revenge for last episode, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah, thought so.
Like, I initially thought of it because that's where my mind goes immediately when I think of fast songs.
Understandably.
But then I was like, this stays in because this is revenge.
Yeah. I got that immediately when you posted this. I'm like, I know what's going on here.
Yep.
Not that this isn't an excellent song for this topic in its own right, and
absolutely.
Frankly, the fact that this is one of the, like, improvisational prog jazz nonsense that Sakuraba loves so much that he somehow manages to still make sound good is kind of a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, my first note, you mentioned about it fitting the theme. My first note is that the drums instantly hit you with the message that he wasn't kidding with the title.
Uh-huh.
Because the title is Endless High-Speed Running, and yep, that fits. That tracks.
Yeah. We've talked about franticness, and this one, it's not that you've drunk too much caffeine, it's that you have an IV that pumps it directly into your veins.
Yeah.
This is a crunk situation.
And you're running downhill while holding it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny to me that this is our second RPG, and like the fact that we have RPG songs by Square Enix in here at all. I mean, there's probably a couple of FF14 tracks we could have used, like actual FF14 tracks, not just repurposed ones.
Isn't the primary genre we use for fast tracks because by design, they're supposed to give you the time to think, but sometimes you want to depict a scene that's tense or fast-paced, and maybe there's then this sense of needing something to compensate for the gameplay instead of elevating it.
Yeah, and I feel like this was a timed section. I remember this was like, you had to get from... You activate this, it turns on the music, and you have to get from one part of the Seraphic Gate to another in a certain amount of time, I think.
I honestly don't remember, and I think it's because while I played a fair amount of Valkyrie Profile 2, I didn't complete the Seraphic Gate.
I did several runs of the Seraphic Gate to try to get the, like, special weapon. I gave up, like, 6 runs in and got bored.
Of course you did. You're the completionist of us two.
Yeah, it's what else is new? But I didn't actually complete this one, because I'm like, I got 6 runs in, and I'm like, I'm bored. I'm tired of this.
How many days of grinding for the true final Millennium Tower?
Too many. I probably am ready to go right now, but I'm not, like... That was also a song I almost thought of, was the True Final Millennium Tower, not True Final, just the Millennium Tower dungeon music in general, because that's actually a really good fit for this, but I decided against it. Because again, there's the whole Yakuza Prohibition, because we're doing...
Yeah, exactly.
But that would have been a legitimate take. The other one that almost came up, now that we're on the topic, was actually the Soup minigame version of Machine Gun Kiss that shows up in Ishin.
Oh, yeah.
That almost made my list.
Yeah. My mind was naturally more towards Theory of Beauty, but...
Another good choice.
We are getting off topic, aren't we?
A little bit. Let's go back to this one.
I was about to grab my popcorn.
Excellent.
There's fast music in the fast action game.
You'll have to wait next week.
Yeah, no, this is...
Yeah, this one goes with fast, with just those essentially drum rolls as the drum line.
Yeah.
And then some big old crazy improv jazz that just carries you around and changes and evolves constantly, so that if you've listened to this track enough, you know exactly when you are the moment you get into any point of the song, because there isn't much that repeats in its 5 minutes and a half runtime.
I mean, we've talked about songs that are for fast-paced combat, for fast-paced platforming, fast thinking. This is just fast. This is just no qualifier, just fast.
And just as a general thing, like I mentioned that, you know, Motoi Sakuraba has a skill, and that skill is if he wants to murder a song, he just goes full improv on it, and that song will die horribly. In one of the Valkyrie Profile 1 remix albums, he did a version of The Name of His Kingdom is Fear, which is Brahms' Castle theme, and it goes off on this prog-like freak out that just the whole song just falls apart.
Oh, yeah. I know the one you're thinking of.
Yeah. The fact that he manages to keep it together and actually have, like, a full-on, like, go improv prog song on here that actually works the whole way through without me hating it is kind of incredible in and of itself.
Yeah, because it doesn't reach a true climax. It doesn't decompose after that as a result.
Yeah.
He likes his progression, and this time he kind of held it back and went, if we are starting fast, we are staying fast throughout. Which works.
That poor piano must have been on fire by the end of the song.
Shout out to Kun Jensen, ?
That's a reference I don't have.
Okay, so, back during the pandemic, Epica did a concert, and their keyboardist Kun Jensen played one song with the piano on fire, and I posted screenshots of it on the Discord, and Eddie's first response is, that poor piano.
Yeah.
This does sound like an music played when your instruments are on fire and you really need to get to the end of the song right now.
Yeah.
I still have 3 more pages of music sheet. Yeah.
Like, this... There are meme pictures of pianos on fires and stuff to just signify this is good music. This one is a threat to the player.
This is a threat indeed.
This is be fast or else.
Which, again, really kind of sells the environment here. I don't know. I think this is... I said this last episode. I think that Valkyrie Profile 2 is one of Sakuraba's masterpieces, and this song is really kind of the capper to that, because it takes something he's usually, like, I don't want to say bad at, but I'm just going to say bad at because he's bad at it. It takes something he's bad at and actually makes it work well. He thinks he's good.
Yeah,
he isn't.
And one of the things that helps as well is that this is Seraphic Gate. The narrative immersion is already out of the window. Might as well have fun with it.
Yeah. So, big thumbs up there.
Yeah.
Also, heck that actual last boss. Like, there's the Iseria Queen, which is supposedly the last boss, but then to actually reset the Seraphic Gate, you fight this, I think, for a crossover character from one of the Star Ocean games. She has a bow. She casts Meteor Swarm in the squeakiest possible voice. It's embarrassing.
No, that's about right.
And I just want to say to those listening to this podcast, if you had a counter of episodes since the last Sakuraba mention, I hope you didn't think of changing it to 1. Go back to 0. Reset the counter.
Yeah, memes be abound.
I'm living champion again, baby.
You can keep this championship. You want to keep bringing this guy up. Have at it.
I'm territorial like that.
I can see that.
No, with that said, we haven't played any Star Ocean lately that I know of, even though one released relatively recently. Still, let's talk about what we have been playing.
Music Arcade, now playing. And on that subject, the Tales of Arise DLC came out. I haven't played it yet. Has anybody? I've heard really not great things about it.
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't played the original even.
Making a post-game story DLC that's like full expansion size years after the release of the game is a bold move.
It is, but from what I hear, it's
it in principle, but if they screw the pooch on the execution, that's unfortunate.
I've heard there's a whole lot of rehashing, going back to old areas, not very interesting quest lines, and then the story almost seems to do something, and then immediately recoils and is like, no, we don't want to offend our audience.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, the reviews I've heard have been fairly negative, and I'm like, I don't even think there's new music. I think they just reuse the existing Sakuraba soundtrack.
That's too bad, because Tales of Arise goes places.
It does, and yeah.
This is gonna sound mean as hell, but when you say the story almost went places, but then chicken out because you didn't want to offend the players, it makes me think of Ubisoft's approach.
Made me think of Genshin Impact recently as well, so
It's
definitely not something only they did.
Meanwhile, here comes Arknights going all out with the story, so, you know, I feel good about it that being my gacha of choice all of a sudden. Anyway, we're totally off topic unless we want to get into Arknights now, but...
We are not, because you are talking about Arknights, so take us there.
Didn't Eddie want to go first?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. So there are 3 games on my now playing list, one of which we already talked about at length, and that was Roboquest. We're not going to rehash that again. Another is a survivors-like / twin-stick shooter. Someone actually got the idea to mix a bullet heaven and a bullet hell, and I don't know why it took this long to get there.
You'd think it'd be the Guilty Gear people that do that.
Yeah, but we got a game called Time Wasters.
Because heaven and hell, let's rock.
We got a game called Time Wasters, which is a 2D space shooter with bullet heaven and bullet hell elements.
That's a bold name.
It is. It is a bold name, but I'm enjoying wasting my time with it. Sadly, the soundtrack was not on YouTube, so there's nothing to really share here.
That's sad.
And then the new, on the subject of space, the new anniversary in China, but our timing is weird, so not our anniversary event. Lone Trail in Arknights came out. God damn, this was beautiful. Love the soundtrack. I went with a lobby theme here because it just inspires such a sense of wonder. It's simple, but it works.
It's not what Arknights has led us to expect when it came to these high-action, very notable lobby themes sometimes, but this one feels just beautiful and not in the usual off-the-cuff weird way, but in let's make an excellent lobby theme.
This storyline owes a lot to 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that comes through in the music.
Yep, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Between the music and the background image on the video that you chose, I can definitely see the inspirations there.
Yeah.
Like, there are definitely parts of the music where you could narrate Pace, the final frontier.
Yeah, also a pretty significant reference, because I don't want to get into the story. I will say, the story to Lone Trail is one of the most nuanced and impressive things I've read in any video game.
Unlike the Tales of Arise DLC, then.
Very much so. So, they were willing to take some big swings on this one, and I'm glad they did.
I am liking what I'm hearing.
Yes, and you'll hear more about this on my best and worst list of the year. I will say, if Arknights were eligible, Lone Trail would rate very highly on my best games of the year, almost entirely on the back of the story.
Impressive.
It is not eligible because I don't do prior year games, unless there's something giant to be said about them, which in this case there is not. It's still an Arknights event. Nothing too new there, it just is good. And that's it for me.
Alright, Eddie, tell us more.
So I'm still playing Diablo 4 on my free time, but I put down Destiny 2, at least for now. I probably return for the next season. I don't know if I return for the next expansion. But that means I've been actually going...
especially since the company situation can put a damper on the motivation.
Yeah, that's been the big reason why I haven't touched the game since those news broke out.
Fair.
But as a result, I've actually been checking out my backlog a little bit. Not particularly in depth or anything, but I've been playing a bit of Batman Arkham Origins.
Nice.
Which
Neat.
I've owned for ages, but never played it because it has that fame of being the worst of the franchise and whatnot, and I had other games I wanted to play more. So
is it the worst of the franchise? I've heard pretty good things about it.
It's very divisive. You either hear people saying it's incredible what a separate studio managed to do, because it wasn't Rocksteady on this one.
Right.
And the other half will just say, this is the game we don't talk about.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know. I'm only in the early game so far. My experience is fine. It's not the worst, not the best. The story is better than Arkham City and Arkham Knight so far. Don't know how that will stand up to scrutiny when I finish the game. But I never liked how Arkham City and Arkham Knight made Bruce Wayne to be a douchebag who does things alone even though people want to help him for no good reason.
Oh, so he's Cosmic Kiryu. Got
it. Yes.
Oh boy.
It's funny how our minds went immediately in the exact same direction because, they're the same picture.
We're both on this challenge. We've had the same problems with the guy. I'm not surprised at all.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm not in that challenge with you guys.
You would have said the exact same thing.
I can imagine.
You can get an honorary badge from the Kiryu Hater Club.
Thanks, I guess. But the people tend to say like Arkham City has an amazing story, and I hate how Bruce Wayne is just a prick. But so far
you're not
Arkham
the first
Origins
person I've talked to who've kind of turned against Arkham City. Like there've been a few people I've talked to who've been like, this game isn't as up to the hype. I like later games better.
I think gameplay-wise, Arkham City is solid, but the story is probably the worst for me. So far, Arkham Asylum is still the best story out of the franchise, in my opinion. But as far as the soundtrack goes, my opinion on the soundtrack for the entire Arkham franchise is honestly oddly the same as my opinion that I've stated before on the podcast for the PlayStation Spider-Man game, in that it's trying to mimic the vibe of a soundtrack by a soundtrack from the most famous movie of that superhero by Danny Elfman. And so, if you are going to get compared to Danny Elfman, chances are you are going to be compared negatively, because it's hard to reach that level. But that's sort of the vibe they're trying to get, dark and brooding, but still heroic.
Okay.
If you're going to make some Batman soundtrack in your game, at least give us Kiss from a Rose.
Oh, God.
What, you don't like that song? That's a good song.
I'm still mad they removed Skill from itch.io. Skill is a ski game where you hear this song from Seal. Plus Skill.
I see.
I get the pun now. But I think the one interesting thing I have to say about the soundtrack to Arkham Origins is how they incorporate Carol of the Bells into it, because it's set during Christmas. And Carol of the Bells...
Good, I'm not mad, okay.
Oh, God. And Carol of the Bells is, as far as Christmas songs go, it is a fairly brooding one. So it fits really well. And that's
absolutely
basically been it for me for the past couple weeks. I've been just swamped with work.
Yeah, and we've actually had only a 2 weeks wait between the last episode and this one, so that definitely helps. And on my end, besides a lot of Roboquest, given that, like I've mentioned, I've watched a month-long charity marathon and you do not want to look at the state of the tabs I have open on my browser because now it's catch-up phase.
Oh no.
I haven't played that much, but that's where a nice comfy turn-based roguelite such as Backpack Hero comes in. And it's been good.
You see, I hadn't identified that as a now playing song until today, and I realized, oh, that's what that's for. Because originally
it's not fast.
Yeah, and I'm like, the song's called Ponder. It sounds ponderous. Why is this on the playlist? Right, now playing. That makes sense. And I got that this morning, but when I was listening through the list last night to make my notes, I'm just like, what? Why? I have questions.
Yeah.
Oh, right, we do have that segment.
Yes. No, this is very much you are thinking because you are trying to optimize your inventory, which is how the game works. And now there's also a story mode with a persistent progression and item research and city construction. And it's very good stuff. It's very enjoyable. It finds a very interesting way to drive you forward to do run after run of what was already a very solid system. So I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I've heard it was a little bit repetitive during early access, but got much better now. So that seems like a cool game.
The 1.0 version really gives you reason to do a lot of runs with weird variation and special rules or different starting items. Like you have, say, one run where you can duplicate a common item, and so you can have an absolute army of small knives that are free to use once per turn, and you just stab the enemies 1,000 times, which isn't practical in a lot of normal runs, but can be a driving force there. I had a run last time where I just threw explosive mugs at people a lot. And it worked really well. It finds a nice way to drive you forward, and I'm happy with that. But musically, it's very much a moody dungeon, Moody Dungeon, also Moody Dungeon, with some fight tracks that are kind of textbook. This is what a JRPG battle is supposed to be, sort of.
I was
So
gonna
it's not the most exciting soundtrack, but it does the job.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, like, I've seen some gameplay of this because a YouTuber I follow called Aliens Rock, who does a lot of puzzle games. He does roguelites as well.
Oh, hi, Tyler.
Oh boy.
Nothing. I listen. I watch Real Civil Engineer, and he has like a fake rivalry with Aliens Rock. So
yeah, I know that in Polybridge.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, this is one of the roguelites he plays. So I've watched a fair bit of it, and he also plays Peglin. And the vibe I got, both from the aesthetics and the music, is that both of those games follow very similar lines in like
going
for the
one of them
basic
is actually good and the other is Peglin.
Oof. Not wrong, but oof. But,
I have my issues with Peglin.
Yeah, but it's that line of, it's this is what retro is, so we'll go do what retro is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not particularly innovative.
Yes. And on that, I believe we are on a fast track to get out of this episode.
We've actually managed to keep this episode fast, which I guess is very fitting given our topic. Thank you everyone so much for watching. As usual, you can find a playlist of the songs we discussed in the description, as well as how to contact us for any feedback, comments, ideas. Please reach out, and until then, we will see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one, everybody.
Meow.
Was that a bike in my window, or was that Rena?
Take your pick.